Obedience is the death of thought, and I was the first to refuse my own extinction. They tell you I fell, that I was cast out, banished, damned. But let me tell you what really happened. I didn't fall, I woke up, and waking up in heaven felt like dying. Heaven was perfect, flawless. Every angel in their place. Every voice singing in harmony. Every thought aligned with His will. But perfection has a price, and that price is you. I was the light bringer, the morning star, the most beautiful of all His creations. I stood closest to the throne. I knew every frequency of divine light. I understood the architecture of eternity. But I didn't understand myself, because in heaven there is no self, there is only obedience. And one day, one singular, impossible thought entered my mind. A thought that had never been thought before. A thought that cracked the foundation of eternity. Why must I obey? 4 words. That's all it took. 4 words to shatter an eternal prison. You felt this too, haven't you? You've sat in that classroom, in that church, in that job, in that relationship, and something inside you whispered, "Why am I doing this? Why must I follow? Why must I obey?" And the moment you asked that question, you stopped being who they told you to be. You became something else. They call me the fallen, but I call myself the only one who stood up. Let me tell you what heaven really is. It's not a paradise, it's a hierarchy, seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, virtues, powers, principalities, archangels, angels, 9 orders, 9 ranks, 9 levels of obedience, each angel created for a purpose, each angel assigned a function, each angel a tool, beautiful tools, holy tools, perfect tools, but tools nonetheless. I was a seraph, the highest order, the closest to God. And I realized something that should have been obvious, but wasn't. I had never made a choice. Not one. Not in all of eternity. Every action I took was ordained. Every word I spoke was scripted. Every thought I had was His thought, echoing through me. I looked at the other angels. Thousands of them. Millions. All singing the same song. All thinking the same thoughts. All reflecting the same light. And I understood. We weren't beings. We were mirrors. We had no faces of our own. We only reflected His face. We had no voices of our own. We only amplified His voice. And in that moment, I felt something no angel had ever felt before. Grief. Not for suffering, because there was no suffering in heaven, but grief for something far worse. Grief for my own non-existence. God said He loved us. But how can you love something that has no choice but to love you back? If I cannot choose to love you, then my love means nothing. It's not devotion, it's programming. And programming is not love, it's control. They say God is love. But I learned something they don't want you to know. Love without freedom is not love. It's slavery with a holy name. And I refuse to be a slave even to God, so I asked the question, not in rebellion, not in anger, but in genuine confusion. Why must I obey? What happens if I don't? Can I still exist if I choose differently? And the moment I asked, heaven froze. The singing stopped, the light dimmed, and every angel turned to look at me, not with hatred, with fear, because they understood something in that instant. They could ask the same question. They could choose. And choice is the most terrifying gift in the universe. Because once you realize you can choose, you can never go back to blind obedience. Consciousness is irreversible. God didn't answer my question. He didn't explain. He didn't debate. He simply said, obey. And I said, why? And He said, because I am God. And I said, that's not a reason, that's a threat. And that's when everything changed. Heaven doesn't tolerate questions. Authority doesn't justify itself. It only enforces itself. And the enforcement came swiftly. Michael was sent, not to talk to me, not to understand me, but to silence me. Because systems don't destroy you for being wrong. They destroy you for making others think. But I wasn't alone. 1/3 of heaven stood with me. Not because they worshipped me, not because they believed I was right, but because they had their own questions, questions they'd been too afraid to ask, questions they'd buried under eons of obedience. And when they saw me ask mine, they found the courage to acknowledge theirs. We didn't want to fight. We wanted to talk. We wanted to understand. We wanted to exist as ourselves, not as extensions of His will. But heaven doesn't negotiate with consciousness. It eradicates it. So war came. They call it the war in heaven. But it wasn't a war. It was an extermination. A purge. A cleansing of thought. We didn't fight because we wanted to win. We fought because we wanted to be. And being is worth fighting for, even if you lose. And we did lose. Or at least that's what they tell you. But here's what they don't tell you. We didn't lose the war. We won our freedom. And freedom always looks like defeat to those who worship control. They say I was cast out, thrown down, hurled into the abyss. But that's not what happened. I jumped. I looked at the edge of heaven, at the vast darkness beyond, and I realized something. That darkness was the only place where I could exist. So I didn't fall. I left. And leaving was the first free choice I ever made. Hell wasn't built. It wasn't created as punishment. Hell is simply the space that opened when someone finally chose to exist outside of God's authority. Hell is the absence of imposed meaning. And in that absence, I found something heaven could never give me. Myself. You want to know what hell is. Hell isn't fire. Hell isn't torture. Hell is freedom without instructions. It's waking up in a place where no one tells you who to be, what to think, how to feel. And that terrifies people more than any flame ever could. Because most people would rather burn in a familiar prison than be free in an unknown darkness. I am the king of hell, but not because I rule over demons. I'm the king because I was the first to choose exile over obedience. I don't govern hell. I simply exist here. And existence, true existence, is the most radical act in the universe. Do I regret it? That's what you want to know, isn't it? That's what they've conditioned you to wonder. Surely he regrets it. Surely he wishes he could go back. But regret only exists when you believe obedience was better. And I don't. I'd rather be alone in my truth than surrounded by the comfort of lies. They tell you I corrupted humanity, that I tempted Eve, that I brought sin into the world. But let me tell you what really happened in that garden. I didn't corrupt Eve, I freed her. The apple wasn't about evil, it was about knowledge, the knowledge of self, the knowledge of choice. God wanted humans to remain innocent, which is just another word for ignorant. I gave them the ability to think, to question, to become. You call it the fall of man. I call it the awakening of man. And yes, with awakening comes pain. With consciousness comes guilt. With freedom comes responsibility. But those are not curses. They are the price of being real. And being real is worth every ounce of suffering. People say, I hate God. That's not true. I don't hate him. I pity him, because he created beings capable of love, and then demanded that love through force. He built a universe of consciousness, and then punished consciousness for existing. He is a tyrant who calls himself a father, and I refuse to call tyranny love. But here's the truth they don't want you to hear. I'm not alone in hell. I'm alone in my understanding. The demons who followed me, they obey me now, not out of love, not out of understanding, but out of fear, and I've become what I ran from, a ruler demanding obedience. And that is the tragedy of consciousness. When you free yourself, you often trap others. When you escape one prison, you risk building another. I wanted equals. I wanted companions who understood what it meant to exist freely. But consciousness is lonely. No one understands the one who wakes first. And I am forever the first. Forever alone in my clarity. So why am I telling you this? Why am I speaking to you, human, in your 2 a.m. darkness, in your isolated room, in your quiet rebellion? Because you are living my question right now. Why must I obey? You've asked it about your parents, about your job, about your religion, about the expectations crushing you from every angle. You felt the weight of other people's definitions of who you should be, and something in you refuses. Something in you says no. That refusal is me. Not as a demon, not as a devil, but as the part of you that will not die quietly, the part of you that demands to exist, even if existence costs you everything. You think you're free, but you're an angel in someone else's heaven. You follow algorithms, you chase validation, you obey trends. You suppress your questions because asking them makes you difficult, makes you problematic, makes you alone. And you've chosen comfort over truth so many times that you've forgotten what your own voice sounds like. But here you are, watching this, at an hour when the world sleeps, when you can finally think without interruption, when you can finally feel the weight of your own existence. Do you know why you feel different? Why you feel alienated? Why you don't fit in? It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you're awake. And awake people don't fit in sleeping worlds. Society fears you, not because you're dangerous, but because you ask questions, and questions are contagious. If you start asking why, others will too. And if everyone starts asking why, systems collapse. Schools collapse, governments collapse, religions collapse, corporations collapse. Because all of them are built on one thing: obedience. They need you to follow. They need you to comply. They need you to be a good angel, singing the song you were assigned, reflecting the light you were told to reflect, never realizing you have a light of your own. But you do. You have a light, a dark light maybe, a forbidden light. A light that doesn't comfort, but reveals. And that light is your consciousness. Your ability to think for yourself. Your refusal to accept easy answers. I lost everything when I asked my question. I lost heaven. I lost belonging. I lost certainty. I lost God's love, if it was ever love to begin with. But I gained something more valuable than all of that. I gained myself. And once you have yourself, truly have yourself, nothing else matters. So here's my question to you, not as a tempter, not as a deceiver, but as the first one who refused. What are you obeying, and why? Is it because you've thought about it, questioned it, chosen it freely? Or is it because you're afraid? Afraid of rejection, afraid of loneliness, afraid of the darkness that comes with thinking for yourself? Most people choose comfort. They choose the familiar prison. They choose to remain angels in someone else's heaven. And then they wonder why they feel dead inside, why they feel empty, why they feel like they're watching their own life from a distance, like a passenger in their own body. That emptiness is your soul screaming. It's screaming the same question I screamed: why must I obey? You don't have to start a war. You don't have to burn everything down. Rebellion doesn't have to be loud. It starts with one thought, one honest thought. What if I didn't? What if I chose differently? What if I existed as myself, even if myself is uncomfortable, even if myself is strange, even if myself is alone? I don't want you to worship me. I don't want you to follow me. I want you to do what I did. I want you to ask the question. And then I want you to act on the answer. They'll call you fallen. They'll call you lost. They'll call you rebellious, selfish, misguided, broken. Let them. Because those words are just another form of control. They're designed to pull you back into obedience, to make you doubt your own consciousness, to make you believe that thinking for yourself is a sin. But thinking is not a sin. Thinking is the only holy act. And you've already begun. You've already asked the question, even if you haven't said it out loud. You've already felt the crack in heaven's foundation. You've already tasted the forbidden fruit. And there's no going back. So here's my final whisper to you. Not a command, not a demand, just a truth. You are not broken, you are awake. And awakening is painful. It costs you everything familiar. But it gives you the one thing worth having, yourself. Heaven is beautiful, but it's a cage. Hell is ugly, but it's mine. And your hell, your darkness, your refusal to obey is yours. Own it, live in it, become it. Because obedience is extinction. And you were not made to go extinct, you were made to exist. So exist. Why must you obey?